Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Andy Ruiz Jr. needs to get his story straight. Does he want to fight Dillian Whyte or not? Because he's changed his tune now, saying that he does want the Whyte fight, a fight he walked away from earlier this year. And there's been some other stuff that's emerged on his social media, which is also rinse and repeat from earlier in the year. Comments like, "Who do you want to see me fight?" When he said that a number of times, and then been saying, "Yeah, big announcement coming soon." And I think the reality of the situation is Ruiz's next fight is all but signed up. But at the moment, he's looking to get his name out there, and he's using Dillian Whyte's name. Because let's face it, more than likely, his next fight is going to be against Chris Ariola. A faded Chris Ariola whose best days were a decade ago. He'll give it a go, he'll throw a lot of punches, but ultimately Ruiz will win that fight. But in the meantime, he needs to get his profile up, which has been on the slide since the end of December 2019 when he lost to Anthony Joshua. So he has said, when he was asked which opponent he wants to face, he said, "I would like to fight Dillian Whyte. I would like to shut him up. That would have been an amazing fight here in the United States or over there. I know I can win. I feel I can win against everybody, but it's all up to me." So that is his latest statement on who he would like to fight. But bear in mind, and this going back to 3 or 4 months now, before the pandemic, there was some offers that were made by Dillian Whyte. A $4 million offer to fight in the US or the UK, and then Whyte had been saying publicly he'd offered Ruiz 5. As it sort of transpired, he hadn't offered 5, but once he learned of that, because he was the one saying that in public, Eddie Hearn said, "Well, offer that. Say that to him, that you'll offer him 5, which was, you know, a verbal offer to bring it up from 4 to 5. But at the end of the day, and see here on screen, Andy Ruiz Jr. said he didn't want it. He said, "You didn't want any smoke, so I moved on to the next opponent. Big announcement coming soon." And that announcement never came. So Andy Ruiz Jr. saying in public just some months ago he'd moved on, and he'd moved on to another opponent. And it was similar sort of stuff with Luis Ortiz. I don't get what Andy Ruiz Jr. is doing at the moment in terms of the stuff that he's putting out in public. One, either his statements that are made in interviews, but it doesn't also seem to line up with his social media, because he says in public he wants to have a tune-up before facing someone like Luis Ortiz. But then he would go put on his social media that, see here on screen, "Would you like to see this fight? Retweet and let me know. It's of Luis Ortiz." A fight he said he wouldn't take until he had a tune-up. So the guy's been all over the place with his statements and things on social media in 2020. And it makes me wonder, there's probably someone else who's running his social media accounts. They're given a general direction, but they're not actually keeping up with what he's saying and what's going out elsewhere, because his statements are all over the place, a little bit Tyson Fury-esque. One day it's one thing, one day it's the next. And the stuff with Whyte, he now wants the fight. He said he walked away, but now he wants it. He's all over the map. And he could have had it for at least $4 million, which he rejected. And then when it was verbally offered to 5, he said, "Thanks, but no thanks, I'm going elsewhere." No doubt for a much smaller payday. And the reality is, and I think people often forget this, they would be crossing promotional lines. And in this day and age of promotional silos, the sort of leading fans on saying, "I want that fight," and he ends up just taking an in-house fight. Was there really the will to take the fight there? I just don't know. Maybe they would be willing to fight Dillian Whyte, knowing that's a shortcut to a title. But at this point, I'm not convinced until they actually sign a contract, because, you know, Andy Ruiz Jr. is saying all manner of things. It's kind of like, you know, him training, but, you know, we just have to see him in his next fight to know, did he really put the effort in? And here's some shots here. This is some footage from just a day or so ago. He's out training. It looks like he's maybe lost some of the weight from when he was 283 pounds for the Joshua rematch, but still relatively heavy overall. We're nowhere near fight shape. I think his optimal fight weight is somewhere in the 250s. 240s would be even better, but he hasn't shown any discipline to get down to that point. I'm sure he's been given, remember he's actually going to be with a new trainer, Eddie Reynoso. I'm sure he's been given some orders. Look, you need to actually come into camp in better shape so we can work on the fight plan, the strategy, executing, as opposed to it being a fat camp. Because you can better believe Eddie Reynoso will not want to repeat what other trainers have gone through, basically having to run fat camps for Ruiz. But yeah, I'm not expecting him to be in a meaningful fight next, and no one will convince me that Ariola is the best fight out there for Andy Ruiz. But it's probably the last time in this sort of 2020 that you can actually make that fight, because Ariola is aging on the vine. He's almost 40 and he hasn't looked great in recent years. Sure, he had a good fight with Adam Kovnatski, but styles make fights, and ultimately Ariola didn't win that one anyway. He threw a lot of punches but ended up getting beaten on the scorecards, and there was no controversy with that result. So I would expect it would be similar with Andy Ruiz Jr. Ruiz either stops him, but more likely ends up getting a lopsided points decision. Ariola will give it a go, and I'm sure if it's not Ariola, it's likely to be someone else in the PBC stable, possibly Dominic Breazeale. That name has been mentioned. Adam Kovnatski's name, that's also been sort of kind of mentioned, but I see that one being less realistic. And Luis Ortiz, he's already said he wants to tune up before facing Ortiz, despite asking in public, who do you want to see me to fight? And that's another question that followed up after his statement about Dillian Whyte. He said, who would you like to see me fight next? But then, he's already been saying a couple of months ago, a big announcement coming soon. His next fight is done and dusted in terms of the paperwork. It's just the pandemic would have slowed it down because they were getting ready to announce something. I'm sure whatever that was is still on the table. They're just waiting for the right time to announce it. But Ruiz, in terms of his statements, he's got to, keep his story straight. And if he's going to say that he now wants to fight Dillian Whyte, what was wrong with fighting Dillian Whyte a number of months ago? Fans wanted that fight more than an Alexander Povetkin fight, but he walked away from a multi-million-dollar offer, no doubt to chase peanuts against Chris Ariola. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.